So I'm joined by Tom Bishop. Tom, thanks for joining us. It's you're the first pro I've had on, so it's yeah, I guess I said in the intro just before we started recording, no pressure on you as being the first. But first things first, how are you? We're in funny times, COVID and everything. How is that affecting you?
Yeah, no, thanks for inviting me on. I'm a bit of a podcast junkie myself. Like over the past kind of 12 months, I've really kind of tried to get my hands on as much as I could. And I feel like it's a real beneficial resource. So I'm happy to kind of get involved.
Brilliant.
And yeah, it's a perfect time for it. If you want to use the word perfect, it's like people can kind of interact with it, learn new things. There's still a lot going out there on the air. So it's good to kind of be involved in this.
Yeah. So how are things with you from a COVID point of view? It's from an amateur point of view. A lot of people are saying to us it's really affected them because one, their motivation to train isn't there because races are being cancelled left, right, and
Yeah,
centre.
yeah.
And the other side of things is an aspect of training they can't do, which is generally swimming. That's really taken a backward step as well. So how's it been for you?
Yeah, it's been really weird for me, to be honest. Like a bit of in the context of what I was doing just as all this lockdown sort of happened. I was in Australia at the time. We were literally just started our season in Malula Ball World Cup. I was kind of on a bit of a quest for Olympic qualification. Like it was up to me to try and qualify our third and final spot for the men's team. And I was about to fly to New Zealand, but our flights got cancelled. We had to kind of get an emergency flight back to the UK just to avoid kind of being stranded basically. So that was quite eventful. We came back to the UK just as lockdown happened, and it's weird. Like we went, a lot of us, and I know because I was kind of kept in touch with all kind of my friends who were training. Like they were highly motivated straight away. People were doing kind of pretty mad things, just kind of making the most out of their kind of one exercise a day, which I don't know, everyone had their own interpretation of it. I was kind of more of a do as best I could, be responsible, just do my one thing. Thankfully, British Triathlon got us treadmills and indoor trainers, so we could literally continue most of our training as best we could. Swimming obviously was a huge kind of unknown for everyone. A lot of us have not had so much time out of the water, so there were loads of ingenious ideas that were sort of floating around social media, like getting paddling pools and all sorts. But I just stuck to kind of band work, and I had this weird sort of like I wanted to kind of do 20 minutes of work just because that was roughly what it would be for like our race distance sort of swim. So I'd kind of start off, emulate like a sprint. So I'd do loads of kind of high intensity stuff. Then I'd go into kind of more stroke rhythmic sort of thing as you settle into your rhythm. So that was a lot of band work. And then do a few kind of other strength and conditioning exercises like core work just to kind of activate that sort of area. And then finish off with like a sprint again. So I was kind of trying to replicate a swim in a race. And it was short and sweet. It was maybe 3 to 4 times a week, but it was just about enough, I think, to maintain a bit of my kind of strength and fitness. So yeah, that was just kind of the way I dealt with not being able to swim really.
It's funny you say about band work because when all this hit, a couple of people were asking me, and I was looking for them myself, and you couldn't get any resistance bands for love nor money. They were like hen's teeth. It was unbelievable. And the ones you could get, they hadn't just like doubled in price. They'd gone up a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, I knew a few friends who tried to get hold of stuff, and yeah, you literally couldn't get them anywhere. Thankfully, our S&C coach from the EIS, he had like a little contact of a gym, like a not very well known sort of supplier who we managed to get some stuff from, which was lucky because later on in the week when I tried to go back on the website, stuff was getting sold out as well. So yeah, it was crazy. Like who would have thought the demand for bands?
Mine came from China in the end, and
the
quality isn't up there, but it did a job. But the problem was it took some like 6 weeks to come. And, but it is what it is. But
Yeah.
it's funny old time. So glad that you were able to continue the training to some form.
Yeah.
You mentioned obviously trying to go for Olympic spot and the third spot there.
Yeah.
Obviously the Olympics moving to next year. I'm hoping that gives you an opportunity then to still continue to go for that spot.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, like it's weird. I almost see this as like my second chance, because I felt like I'd started this season in not the shape I needed to be to kind of do it justice. Like looking back, I just think I'd kind of just mistimed my form slightly. So it's kind of like a proper second chance. This is, so I'm taking the most of my time now to really kind of think about what I need to do to kind of just progress slightly in my performance, because like it's quite it's a very kind of tough gig out there racing. So I'm just like using this chance now not to kind of worry about if I'm racing in a couple of months time or not. I'm just focusing on long-term development for next season.
It's like an extended winter, isn't it? In theory.
Yes.
And we've been saying this to a couple of people who have asked us on the channel, and we were saying, okay, the races aren't there, but this is a perfect opportunity, and I'm talking amateurs here now. This is a perfect opportunity to really concentrate on aspects of your performance that you may not have had an opportunity before.
Yeah, 100%
It's
agree with
really
that.
a chance to just sit down and say, right, what do I need to work on? Strength and conditioning, technique, whatever. Perfect opportunity.
Yes, I agree. I think I I've like definitely found some areas in my game that I want to improve, and I'm definitely taking this time to really kind of focus on them. I mean, it's hard if your area was swimming because you've had a lot of time out of the water, but it's almost chance like now when pools hopefully open in the next kind of couple of weeks or maybe even a month, if they're trying to kind of really get the safety right, you almost have a bit of a clean slate in terms of it's easier to learn new skills if you haven't been reinforcing them for 3 or 4 months. So it's actually a really good opportunity to make those changes in your swim stroke that you potentially would have just ignored had you just been swimming the whole time. Or if you're open water swimming, like I can't say that whenever someone asks me about swimming, I'm like, open water is such an it's so underused in training. I think like there's so many skills you kind of don't realize you need for open water if you want to really kind of maximize your like potential in a race. Stuff like sighting, like you can save so much time just by swimming in a straight line and learning how to go around a buoy faster. Like there's so much you can do, which it might take hours and hours in a pool to kind of shave off a second per 100 here or there, but you could literally save off like take off so much just by just making yourself a slightly better open water swimmer.
Well, I'm Cardiff based, and I've got
Yeah.
a number of friends who were training for Ironman Wales this year, and
Okay.
And that's what they've done. They've had to switch in the last few weeks to open water swimming, and although Ironman Wales isn't going ahead,
Yeah.
they're still focusing on other events, and
Yeah.
we're quite fortunate that we've got a coast near us, stretching as far down as West Wales. So there's opportunities to
Yeah.
at least sea swim. There's also opportunities to river swim, and again, I'm very fortunate that we've got some stretches of river that we can train in. But
Yeah.
it's not for everyone, and it's not, if you're not used to it, like you've already said, it's a very different kettle of fish to what you have in the pool. Very,
Yes,
very different.
absolutely.
It's
Yes, I
oh,
would.
sorry.
Yeah, I'd say we're obviously. I live in Leeds at the moment, so we haven't got the sea, unfortunately. But yeah, we've got a few little spots along the River Wharf which we've been using, which they're like really nice. They're quite quiet. Like I wouldn't recommend anyone going and swimming in the river unless you're very, very confident and competent, because it's a lot more risky because of the currents. You don't really know. Like with rainfall, a river can change from one day to the next. So it's to be advised with a lot of caution, or with someone who knows the spot. but again, like, I've learned so much just by kind of experiencing and exposing myself to that environment, and yeah, I'm gonna take that forward into next year, hopefully.
So, as I mentioned before we came on air, that a lot of our listeners, they've probably come from an amateur background. They might
Yeah,
not necessarily know triathlon like the general public would know football, rugby, and the typical sports that are popular within the UK. Triathlon is a growing popular
yeah,
popular sport. South Wales is booming with triathlon at the moment, yeah, and
that's good to
no,
hear.
yeah, no doubt, probably the Leeds area is as well, given that
Yeah,
what the team is doing up there. But
yeah,
can you explain just very briefly about the circuit that you compete on? The ITU and things, because I don't think
yeah,
everyone fully understands that
yeah.
element of triathlon.
Okay, so the ITU circuit is, well, we race on the World Series, which is kind of the highest echelon of that, the ITU racing. So there's European Cups and World Cups just underneath that, but it's nothing to do with like iron distance racing or horse or anything like that. It's like sprint distance and Olympic distance. And I guess if you don't know those distances, we've got 750 swim for sprint, 20k bike, and a 5k run. And the Olympic distance is double that, 1500, 40k, 10k. And we all race in a drafting format as well. I think age group is now race in a drafting format and certain distances, but we've brought up racing that sort of distance. So it's no drafting. It's all kind of pack racing, a lot more tactical. And yeah, like back to the kind of the racing series, it's sometimes varies, like up to 10 races in a series, and then which finishes in the grand final, which kind of crowns you world champion at the end of the year. So it's a bit like the F1 sort of, in terms of it's a series and it's the overall kind of winner after the end of that. Takes all the accolades. But it's amazing like how it's changed from, well, I think it's 2009 it first started. So yeah, it's been going over 10 years now, and it's really developed the style of racing incredibly so. Like the speed that everyone just competes at is ridiculous now. Like it's why we have to be really smart with what we do, because in the past it just used to be, if you're fit enough you'll kind of get around and be successful, but now there's a lot more to it. It's really like fast and dynamic, and they've introduced a a kind of a relay event into it as well, where you have two guys, two girls, each competes at a very short distance triathlon and hands over to the next. And yeah, that's kind of a whole new element to the sport, which is again changed it. It's always evolving really.
The relay is relatively new to me as well, my sort of knowledge around it, but I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's
Yeah,
exciting, it's quick,
yeah,
and it helps when we have pros like yourself and the other guys in the team who are competing at the top. So
yeah,
from a public interest point of view, it's great, because otherwise the public only generally tends to see triathlon at the major events like
yeah,
the Olympics, and it's a shame, but I do think definitely that is changing, and there's a lot
yeah.
more people out there that would recognize a triathlete, a pro triathlete now, or recognize a name at least.
I'd hope so. But yeah, the great thing about relays is that you can literally put them in such a small area. Like in the past, you needed a fairly big like area to compete in, whereas for a relay, if you do laps of an event, you like they held one in, well, they held like really tight, small kind of short course events in the Canary Wharf, at Trent Bridge in Nottingham, like all over. I'm sure Cardiff could host an exceptional relay. Like anywhere, any city could probably fit in a relay. So I'm really hoping that's an area that triathlon will continue to develop in, and it can be done. Like you watch some of the like the kind of the domestic cycling, like called the Tour Series. They kind of go around cities, race in the evening. They bring a bit of crowd to the streets. It's like really exciting, and I'm hoping it can be that sort of festival type thing, just a bit of a a summer series in the UK, because I'd say that's the one thing is like a British pro, like racing abroad's amazing, but I'd just love to kind of have a really successful domestic scene of racing, which they've tried to get off the ground a bit, but I just think there could be a little bit more going into that and really, really push that forward over the next couple of years.
It's really interesting you say about Cardiff, and Cardiff is probably crying out for it. We've got Cardiff Bay, which is a barraged sort of pool of water, and there's the Cardiff Triathlon every year that's held there, but it lends itself so well to it, and it could be a festival of triathlon, very similar to what Leeds holds every year.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's appetite, because of Ironman Wales within the South Wales area, triathlon has gone huge. And we've seen traditionally people who have played football and rugby and maybe get to a certain age and can't do it anymore. They're looking for something else. They're hungry for something else. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I went down to watch the Ironman. I didn't really know much about triathlon. And, this is almost 10 years ago. I went down to watch it. And it just gets you, and and if you're that type of person that thinks, I'd love to be involved in this, I'd love that challenge, but what we are finding is there's a lot of people out there that don't come from a swim, bike, run background, so are hungry for information, which is brilliant, but then at the same time there's a lot of bad information out there. And people are just look for quick fixes or quick ways to get fit and quick ways to get quick on a bike or something.
It's I'd always really kind of be wary about the quick fixes. It doesn't happen. Like you might potentially see a bit of quite a quick progression, because if you've not done any of the sports before, immediately adding this new stimulus your body will react to it fairly quickly, but there's always risk with changing stuff so fast, because your body does take time to adapt. And if you sometimes give it too much stimulus, you might get injured, or you might get too tired and stuff. Like there's no quick fix. I just kind of, my advice would be to kind of really make sure you get the basics right, the movement, the skill level, so you don't get injured. Like, that's the most important thing, in my opinion. And there are coaches out there who will be very good at kind of giving you advice on your swim technique, even on running and cycling form. Like, you often see kind of people out riding, and the mechanics of their movements just going to cause them an injury down the line, and you don't want to see that. So you kind of need to filter out the noise and just know what you're trying to look for, which is a good coach who knows like movement quite well. That would be that's kind of my opinion on those guys who are getting into the sport and who just want to do it because you want to do it for a long time. You don't want to do it for a year and then find out that you've hurt yourself and you can't continue.
And the other thing from my point of view is a lot of people around our area, again South Wales, get into the sport but jump straight into the longer distance stuff, which is brilliant from a participation point of view, but you really got to have your head switched on as regards to not going too fast too soon. And when I say fast, I mean just diving straight in. And I'll hold my hands up, I was one of those idiots who'd never done a triathlon before and signed up for Ironman Wales because it was seen as a challenge, a little bit like running a half marathon or a marathon. Or that's a challenge, let's do it. And it's not until you then take a step back and think, actually, I don't know anything about transition. I swam when I was a kid, but I'm not a competitive swimmer. The only bike I ever rode was a mountain bike, and I can run in a straight line. But it's not as simple as that. And in theory, it could be, but you need to know how to put them all together. And also you need to build up. And I know far too many people who have gone straight in Ironman Wales as their first Ironman and been found out, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a shame because you want that first experience to be really enjoyable.
Exactly.
And that's like there's so many local sprint triathlons out there, which is it's the distance I said, the 750 or sometimes 400 meters if it's in a pool, 20-kilometer bike and a 5K run. It shouldn't be too hard to train for. Whereas an Ironman, like I've never actually competed at an Ironman distance. I don't feel ready to compete at a level I want to. I just think you have to respect the distance, and there's such a nice community and culture around these shorter distance triathlons, and a lot of them are aimed at kind of beginners or first timers, which it just makes the whole atmosphere a lot more friendly. You can bring your family down. It's not a whole day thing. It can just be in the afternoon. I think they're just perfect to start, and there's no reason why you couldn't train to do one in the same year. I would just say always kind of dip your feet in a shorter distance one, in a slightly safer, more kind of exciting or fun family environment. Probably makes sense to me anyway.
No, I 100% agree, because I know far too many people who have dived straight in at the deep end, signed up for a larger, longer event, whether it be a half or Ironman or a full, gone in like a bull in a china shop and bought every piece of equipment under the sun.
Yeah.
You know, 3-4 grand bikes, wetsuits costing 300-500 quid, and then they do one race and they've not enjoyed it for whatever reason, and I can put money on it. One of those reasons is maybe it was too much too soon, and then all of a sudden a 4 grand bike is on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely an expensive sport to get into with all the equipment. That's another thing. If you start slow and then progress up into the long distance, you can upgrade and kind of you compile your equipment. You get your entry level stuff to start your first few races. Then you might upgrade. You might get a faster bike or a higher level wetsuit. And over time, you don't have to spend all the money straight at once. You can kind of like ease in. Because when you're doing an Ironman, you kind of want fairly good equipment that's going to get you around 180 kilometers on the bike, because it's kind of a big part of the race. But for a sprint distance, you could probably get away with a slightly lower level kind of set of equipment just to kind of start off with and see if you like the sport before.
We tell people to beg, borrow and steal,
Definitely.
If you've got a mate, ask them if you can borrow their bike. The amount of mates who have asked me if they can borrow a wetsuit, and I always give them my wetsuit from my first Ironman, which was a second-hand one from eBay, and it served me well. It got me round, but for a fraction of the price. So with that in mind, then, how did you get into triathlon?
I played a bit of football and cricket at school. We swam ever since I can remember. It was a safety thing initially, just so we never got in trouble in water and we could kind of enjoy holidays by the beach. And then we kind of got picked up by a local swim squad. This is me. I've got a twin brother who also does triathlon.
I was gonna say.
That's why I use the word we.
I did my my Googling beforehand. Yeah. So your brother's David, is it?
That's right, and he actually won Cardiff Tri a few years ago, I think. So we just kind of, we were quite active throughout school. My mum and stepdad actually did a bit of triathlon because it was just kind of, she got into the sport and we kind of followed along when we're in our kind of mid-teens, and never really looked back. Like my dad does marathon running, so we've got a bit of kind of endurance genes in the body, so we're kind of pretty good at it. Competed nationally and then got a few international caps when we were juniors, and it's kind of just continued to progress up until now, really. David still competes at like long distance races. He's balancing a bit of part-time work with Hoob, but I'm fortunate enough to kind of get a bit of lottery funding to just pursue the Olympic dream and stuff. So it's a pathway a lot of kind of successful people go through, like swimming when they were younger, realizing they were fit, but didn't necessarily want to become competitive swimmers. So triathlon's is a nice second option, really.
And so have you got any indication what is happening now for the rest of this season? Is it a write-off as regards to the series?
Yeah, the World Series never got started. Like, we were in Australia when Abu Dhabi got cancelled, which was the first round of the World Series, and then everything else. I think, well, they always say there are a few races planned, but they keep on getting rearranged. The ones that are potentially on the circuit are Hamburg and Montreal, and they actually announced yesterday that they might be hosting a World Champs right at the end of the year. But our federation have kind of given us the option of nothing. You don't have to race. Like, psychologically, for me to race would be pretty tough, because I kind of wrote the year off, decided to kind of alter my training to kind of for more long term, and
Yeah.
to suddenly try and train to race in a month, I'm not going to get the best out of myself. So I'd rather kind of just continue with my plan that I'd committed to for a couple of months, rather than just suddenly change everything. Because again, nothing's for certain. Like, they have these events scheduled, but events are literally getting pulled every week, so there's nothing certain yet. I know British Tri are trying to put on some socially distanced racing soon, which will be good. I think that'll be quite fun to do if we can, but nothing international, nothing kind of top end, like world class level. I think it's too much of an emotional roller coaster to keep like focused on something you're not really sure about.
Yeah, and if very similar to what amateur athletes are having now at the moment. That they're focusing on a race, and then every
Yeah,
week a race is being cancelled. And even now we're going into the season where the rearranged races are starting to be cancelled.
yeah.
So my advice to all the amateurs at the moment has been write off this season and just try and get back as strong as possible for next year.
Yeah, I think that's smart. And like you said earlier on, just take a chance to work on some of those things that you probably wouldn't have had the chance to if it like we don't often get to train like for such in the summer without having interruptions of races. So it's a real good chance to kind of focus on something. And if you're kind of that way inclined, motivated, you could even set yourself some personal challenges, like trying to better your 10K run time, or like I've seen a lot of that stuff going around. Personally, it's not for me. I'd rather just kind of stick to a bit of a training plan that I've kind of got in my mind, but other people thrive off like personal challenges like that. So even you could work it, I guess, if you've got a group of mates that you're training with, you could all kind of set a course out and like individually go and try and who does the fastest kind of lap, or like Strava segment or something like that. There's so many ways to keep it interesting if you want to.
Yeah. So from a training point of view, I know you're based in Leeds and with the team there. So you're training outside of COVID. Would that be with Alistair and Johnny and the rest of the team up there?
It's Leeds is actually, we've got a big squad. I think there's just under 90 or so last season,
Wow.
including like kind of the like the more kind of just development level and stuff. So we've actually got quite a few different training groups within it. I train with Alex G and Sam Dickinson and a few of the like younger under 23 guys. Johnny and Alistair train together with a few of the other development guys, and it just works well because not everyone should do the same thing. We're not,
Yeah, of course.
so it's like we so it just works well like that, to be honest. Like I have trained with Johnny and Alistair when I first came to Leeds. Like I was kind of going through that development stage, so it was really nice to train with them and learn from them. But now I'm kind of like one of the senior athletes in Leeds now, and there's a few guys who kind of train in our group, and hopefully I'm a bit of a role model for those to learn from, which is it's quite a nice thing. And again, it's like functioning a group of maybe 20 to 30 kind of elite level guys is pretty tough to manage for coaching. So we've got a few coaches in Leeds as well who kind of manage the different groups. So yeah, it all works fairly well.
And triathlon for you is a full-time job, and for majority of our readers, it's the other way around, and triathlon comes in their sort of spare time as such. So
Yeah.
how do you switch off from triathlon? What's your sort of other passion in life, so to speak?
Yeah, I have a few little things that I like to do. I really like reading. Like I'm a big reader. I've got kind of a couple of books on the go at the moment. Like some of them are, well, I usually read fiction, and my genre of choice is fantasy. But I've got a lot of kind of other books on the side as well. So this has been a really good time to kind of really get into those. Cooking is kind of a bit of an enjoyment of mine. I like just putting a podcast on or listening to an audiobook and cooking. That kind of helps me relax. And then actually just going to the pub with some of my friends. Like, people expect elites to kind of be really, really strict with the diet and abstain from alcohol and this, but I just help, like, in moderation. It's nice just to kind of relax and switch off, because it's really important to have that kind of balance and that ability to take yourself away from the sport, because we do train over 30 hours a week. Sometimes it gets very intense. It's pretty challenging, and it can get quite emotional when you're training really hard and stuff. So it's a real good way to kind of get away from all that. So yeah.
Brilliant. Look, Tom, I've kept you long enough, so I'll say thank you very much for coming on. Pleasure to talk to you. I'd absolutely love for you to come on again in the future if we can find a topic. But yeah, brilliant to have you. Thanks very much, and we'll catch up again soon. Cheers, mate.
Welcome. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.